Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher, joined by my regular cohort, Hall of Famer Dick Briggs, ready to talk about wrestling on all levels. A big week of college and high school wrestling last week, and then ahead coming up this weekend, highlighted by the spectacular 3-day event down at Extreme Arena in Coralville. We'll have lots to talk about on the college and high school side. We also have IGHSAU Executive Director Erin Gerlich joining us today. But Briggsy, this is a fun part of the season. We were at some of the same places Thursday and Saturday, and boy, there's nothing that can match this time of year.
Oh yeah, the excitement last week with the boys was a blast at the conference tournament and so forth. But this is the grand stage for the girls this week, so looking forward to it.
And as we mentioned, we have the pleasure of having the Girls Union Executive Director Erin Gerlich. Erin, if you don't know her past, she's been instrumental in the sanctioning of girls wrestling. Became the executive director in May of 2024. Erin, thanks for joining us today and squeezing us in this week. I know it's busy for you.
Yeah, nope. Always happy to make time for you all. But yeah, we've got a lot going, a lot moving and shaking. So we're exciting. It's just like for everybody else, this is the pinnacle of our season too. So we're all amped up and ready to go, just like everyone else is. So.
And so, Erin, you are from Panora, right?
Yeah. Yep. Still live at Panorama.
So I got to ask you a somewhat personal question. Do you live in town? Do you live around the lake, or are you somewhere east of town?
I live actually out at the lake.
Okay.
Yep. I grew up out there. Moved away for a while. Actually went to Oklahoma State, which is either really exciting for wrestling people or not. So one or the other. A lot of strong feelings about that. But yeah, when I moved back,
right.
I just recently moved back out to the lake a couple of years ago. So.
Right. My wife's family has a lake house there, so I'm very familiar with it.
Oh, yeah, you'll have to shoot me the address because it's growing up there, you know about everybody, even if they're out of towners. So, or at least where they live, right?
So that's a little bit of a commute for you.
It is. It's about 45, 50 minutes. My daughter's an 8th grader. It's just a great school system for us. I, felt strongly about just having her stay there. It was a great school for me growing up, a lot of opportunities there. Just wanted to give her that small town experience, but my family's all there. So, it's easier for me to make the adjustment when we need help with stuff and when she's got stuff going on than it is for everybody else. So yeah, love it there.
Now, of course, you've played a great role in conjunction with a few other organizations to really get girls wrestling sanctioned and oversee this explosion in numbers. Can you talk about just kind of how things started for you when it came to the growth of wrestling to where especially with the state tournament starting with, those Iowa Wrestling Coaches and Officials Association tournaments in Waverly to where we have now multiple classes in just a handful of years competing in a multi-day tournament in Coralville, because it really has been exceptional.
Yeah, I give a ton of credit to, those obviously who came before this organization, right? And so the IWCOA was absolutely instrumental in rolling out what I consider like a blueprint for us and how it would look and how it would maybe work. So it was, when we're sitting there and we're seeing these tournaments unfold at Extreme Arena, like it's easy for us then to visualize how this would look under our umbrella, and then, we didn't have to, a lot of the other states, they may have beat us to sanctioning, right? But, they're working with 100 participants and they're begging people to go out. And, we have the good fortune here in Iowa of, being from some wrestling communities, and wrestling is not such a foreign concept to our kids, whether that's girls or boys. And So people were really willing to jump in, and I think schools and families could, more easily come alongside those kids and support them, because we understand all of the good benefits that we have seen on the boys' side, and then that has transpired and translated over to the girls' side. But we didn't have to beg anybody to go out; they were busting at the seams, ready to go. And it was more so than they're looking at us of like, hey, is this enough yet? Are you ready for us yet? And so we were fortunate, and it's when we were able then to just kind of wrap our arms around it and say, okay, these are our processes, this is what sanctioning looks like, and kind of going from there. But it was, I started in September of 2021, and I think by November, it was actually in October, very last weekend in October. By that time, it was just cold calling schools and explaining to them our process, and kind of, I think when they knew that there was a point person on it and it was going to be legitimate, a possibility of moving forward, then they're more apt to say, yes, we would support this. Yes, we would jump on board. So when we got the commitment of those 50 schools that equal 15% of our member school makeup, then that's when we were able to really kind of start to put the framework together and present that to our board of, hey, we do think that this is a viable option. And then we have, a bunch of stakeholders in the room from other organizations that help us kind of streamline it and get together. So it started really, with a big boom, and it really has not slowed down since. So
from the first.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
That's quite a process that you just described. It's fascinating to hear that. Can you share the numbers and how they've increased since that beginning there?
Yeah. So in 2022, within kind of that, really kind of that first year, as we were looking at who is participating on that IWCOA side, I think their tournament had over 700 entries. They didn't have a qualifier for it, which was all fine. It was just part of that process. Great wrestling happening there, but they had competing in that season, or when they the numbers that we take are the numbers that are coming from the weight certification process within track wrestling. So essentially, if they're entered into track wrestling, we count them as a participant or someone who could be eligible that season. That's really just the best way for us to get that number. So that year, I think 2022, it was just over 1,000 people, 1,000 girls, and this is just in the high school space. And then that next year, when we're rolling out that first tournament, that looked like we were hoping, oh gosh, if we could get to 1,500, that would be great. Yeah, it was like over 2,300. It was almost 2,400, which that was like, woo, we were hoping for maybe 100, 120 schools. That's what felt manageable to us. And we had 180 schools, 190 schools. It was insane. And again, we don't have a real concept of these numbers until November, when kids are getting weight certified and when schools are making their final declaration of, yeah, we're going to have a program or not, because the season had started and we were still getting calls from schools. Hey, we got girls interested. Can we get started? Can we do this? And it's like, yeah, let's go. Let's everybody get on the boat. Let's go. And so that was the big explosion there that we could not really anticipate. But we got through that. The next year, then last year, there was just over 3,100. And then this year, it's slowed down a bit, and we're just shy of 3,500 this year. So again, that's eligible for the season. Now, what we really look at as far as like what we consider almost like our varsity numbers is then the participants then in our state qualifying event series. And so this year we had just around 1,800 girls participate, and that's still up 200 from the last year, and that was up 400 from the year before. And so we're still seeing that uptick. I do think we'll kind of start to hit a little bit of a plateau, or that growth will slow a little bit, but we're going to be really intentional about getting a survey out this year to also ask our schools of what their 7th grade and their 8th grade numbers are right now, because we're hearing that there's a large number of girls that are participating in that junior high space, and we just don't have a great way of capturing that data. They're not necessarily entered into track wrestling or things like that, but you don't know, because a lot of those programs are doing split season when they're doing both basketball and wrestling, which is great. So you don't know exactly which way they're going to lean, but that they're trying it, so that's important too.
Dick and I, we call duels for KCRG 9.2 every Thursday, and a lot of times when we're there, we see like youth nights. It's a lot of times that's going on. The thing that's really cool to see is before, when it used to be just a line of boys that were being introduced, and now we're seeing, almost sometimes an equal amount of girls that are in those youth clubs. And I'm kind of getting goosebumps
Yeah.
talking about it, because you see that impact that's trickled down. And now, you mentioned the junior high, kind of getting a pulse on the junior high numbers. It trickles all the way down to the youth clubs, and now you're seeing that that participation and that, God, I hate to say it, just the normalization.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a stigma before, but now it's what you hope to see, where those young ladies are part of those youth clubs too. I mean, that's a direct effect for what we've seen the last 5 years, and the influence that, competitors, like Peach from Iowa Valley, and Naomi Simon from Decorah, and Jamesi from Waverly Shell Rock, and a lot of those other Biscaglia from Raccoon River Valley, the impact those athletes have had. I mean, that's got to be a positive for you guys, seeing how that is right now.
Yeah, we're being pretty intentional organizationally about, because we see sometimes the drop off in numbers at that middle school level. We know sometimes there's just in general for our sports, like let's say basketball, right? When we are looking at maybe why are some of those numbers declining in high school sports, it's because it's starting to decline in the junior high space. So we have been doing what's called, this past year, we've been rolling out the Future Champions clinics. And so we've added that to wrestling this year. And so we did it for basketball last year, for tennis, for volleyball this past year. We're going to be doing it with wrestling and basketball again. We kind of hope to add it as a component to most of our state tournaments where those apply. But we are so Wednesday night, the night before, we are bringing in the University of Iowa women's team, and they are giving a skills camp basically to 6th through 8th graders from the surrounding area. And then those girls get, free tickets into the finals on Friday night, and just really growing that. But to your point, the girls, I wonder, sometimes I think some of them are more intentional, that maybe have been more invested in their own youth programs from their spaces. But it's, you just wonder if they even have any sort of realization of what kind of trailblazers they have been in this, in terms of being advocates just in their own communities for them, and growing that, and stepping foot into those rooms, and taking those girls under their wing, and being an awesome role models for those girls to be able to look at on the mat and watch compete, and be fierce competitors and gracious competitors, and those things too. So I think it's awesome that I think of Naomi Simon last year when she won her 4th state title, and the crowd going wild and looking over, and I think the Decorah crowd is spotlighted a little bit, and you've got all of these girls, right, that are young, and they're banging on the dasher boards, and they're going insane. And that was a really, really cool moment, because, for whatever kind of platform and pedestal we can put her on, their community was just elevating it that much more. They're really excited for her. So that's just, those things are really cool.
Right. And I'm going to add this too. Not only those young girls that are being influenced, but then you've got your established athletes in the school that, and KJ, to your point, it's normalized, so that they're not afraid to, maybe they're all state in another sport, say softball, catcher or something, and then they step into a sport they've never really tried before, and maybe they don't have the success that they had, and it's really cool to see that. And I'm kind of saying that with KJ here. His daughter did that very same thing, and I'm really proud of her. Being very successful in other sports, but not as successful in this, and still doing a great job of finishing up. Now, Erin, I wanted to go a little bit further with the numbers. I wanted to compare Iowa nationally, because you mentioned all those great numbers. Where do we stand nationally?
Yeah, I think that's the really exciting part when I look at the data. And so we get a recap. USA Wrestling and Wrestle Like a Girl, and I'm probably leaving out other organizations, but they put together a really nice recap for every state in kind of a large book. I'll send it to you guys. I think it's just a really awesome resource. But they put together kind of a snapshot from every state, and they compile this booklet, and they release it sometime in the summer of what's been done in the year past. And so looking at the numbers from last year, we were, there's 30 some states that are sanctioned at this point, maybe close to 40. And we were number 4 when it came to overall participants. And so I think we were just edged out. We might have been number 3 the year before, but we were just edged out by Washington State. And then the 2 above that are Texas and California. And, California's got like 8,000 participants. There's no way, we're never going to probably reach anything like that just because of the sheer, their population. Yeah. And same with Texas. Right. But, for us to be ahead of New York and Pennsylvania and, it's awesome to look at our population and say, yeah, we're doing this and we're doing it big. And I think, in most situations we're doing it right. So
maybe by per capita, we're even higher.
Yeah, I would say we are. I would say we're the biggest, we're the best, right? But it'll be interesting again then to see when that information comes out, because there was a pretty significant gap. I think Illinois was behind us, and I know I just talked to Ron over in Nebraska, and they might be sitting at about 2,500 girls or so this past season. So there's definitely some that are climbing, but then there's a pretty big gap of, again, states that have it and they've got under 1,000 participants. You just kind of wonder what some of that looks like. And a lot of them they're finding out that they're having a really tough time with it. And when we go to national meetings and we sit around and we talk about that with other state wrestling administrators and executive directors, and they're kind of like, how did your numbers grow so fast? And I was like, well, let me ask you this question. Do you have a sanctioned season for the girls? Because again, I think Iowa got a little bit of a bad rap because we waited, so long. I think we were 33rd or 34th to technically be sanctioned, but we sanctioned an entire season and the tournament with it. A lot of these other states that are sanctioned just have a sanctioned girls tournament. They don't offer a sanctioned girls season. So I think there's some misconception on that. And so they say, well, we still let the girl pick or the school pick, or we still allow them to compete in both lanes, or we don't have anything separated yet. And I was like, and that's why you haven't seen the boom.
Right.
The boom comes with saying we're going to have a separate girl season because, probably 98% of girls they have expressed as, we don't have any desire to wrestle boys, especially the new ones coming out. They don't have any desire to wrestle boys. And that's not where they feel comfortable getting started. And so it's like, I just say, if you separate it, they will come.
Okay, so humor me here for a second, since Dick brought it up. I'm going to mention that our younger daughter, Katie, played basketball her entire life. She would attend tournaments or duels with me, never expressed that she wanted to try it. I was the last one to find out that as a senior, she decided to wrestle this winter. So I'm trying not to get choked up here.
Yeah.
Just because when things ended Friday, she came home in tears. Not because she didn't accomplish goals.
Yeah.
The thing that came out of her mouth was, it's hard because it's the awkward family I didn't know I needed.
Oh.
And with our history, with wrestling, we know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
And here's they had one last practice Monday, even though Xavier didn't have any qualifiers.
Yeah.
Here's the text that she sent. Thank you guys for the support this season, especially with something new and different. Wrestling has taught me so many things that I can take with me beyond the sport. That And I think that's the perspective a lot of people should understand, that, you know, this has a lot of layers to it. You know, you have a great spectacle, but it's also providing a lot of young female athletes a way to grow intangibles that they can't get in other sports.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, that just adds a little bit to the what exactly you guys are doing with the sport, and how it's kind of got that butterfly effect, more so than the people competing this weekend, but just across the state for, you know, those 3,800 girls that are competing. So it's
Wow. Yeah.
pretty
That's,
cool.
that's an awesome, I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, what you can't ask for more than that. You know what I mean? As far as a parent, or even just somebody in our shoes, of when we hear those stories, that those are the things that fuel us and continue for us to try to provide as many opportunities as possible. But, you know, I think if I really look at, you know, some of the girls that have, you know, really stepped into the space and started competing, and the things that their coaches tell me, or their administrators, and or just the girls themselves, I love to have conversation with them, you know, anytime we can. But, you know, I think wrestling has given them this space, different than some other sports maybe, to really put some expression to, or a name, or a place to some of this like grittiness and this toughness that's associated with the Iowa girl, right? And it's
Right.
and it really gives them, you know, like your daughter said, this kind of other family atmosphere with it. And we like to think that all of our sports do that in some level, but wrestling feels like it's a little different in some spaces there, or these girls who maybe have participated in other sports, even at a high level, and you know, the sport is in such a different place than our existing sports. So I think sometimes it feels a little bit different as these girls are kind of discovering what it is about this sport that feels so special to them. And, you know, I think it just kind of comes back to that. I have said it so many different times and used it in so many different ways, but I always say, you know, what's special about Iowa is that we grow our own crops, and we take a lot of
Yeah.
pride in that, you know, and so that same thing just translates so well into the Iowa girl when we're talking about growing girls in confidence, in leadership, and giving these avenues of expression. And I think wrestling has been so powerful for girls to step into that space, to feel like they can grow in confidence, to feel like they can be leaders, even when the first step that they took was really unknown. But the confidence they gained after that is immeasurable. Because I think the biggest thing that we do for our females in sport is grow them in confidence, to send them out into the rest of the world, to do whatever they want to do, right? For them to step into unknown spaces and feel confident that they can go out there and do whatever they want.
Right. I guess we're still in the pioneering stage. Even at some of the schools, you know, we've had it around for maybe 6, 7 years or whatever it's been, you know, with IGHSAU. Anyway, so if it's a new program like Xavier's, it's only their second year. Is that right, KG? Second year of the program?
Yeah. The very first year they had a sharing agreement with Marion, but they didn't have anybody participate.
Right.
So really the second year.
And that's funny you should say sharing, because that leads up to my next question, and that is, first of all, roughly how many schools do provide girls wrestling or are involved in that, and then how many of them actually are sharing?
Yeah, so we have, I think the count as we kind of ended the year, and it's a little bit of a loose count with our schools that participated, because some had a program for a couple of weeks, some didn't participate in postseason, some are trying to build a program, or they might have a junior high program. So we're looking at about 218 programs right now for the girls. And so, you know, and that's compared to, I think, you know, 284 maybe for the boys. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, so we are growing in programs there. We have over 50 cooperative sharing agreements. I think we have like 53 cooperative sharing agreements. So that might involve 2 schools, that might involve 5 schools. The cooperative sharing agreements are all different, but there's, at least half of our schools are involved in cooperative sharing. And those are year-to-year agreements. So it's, one of the things that happened last year when we announced that we were moving to 2 classes. So we made that announcement in the spring. And then, I think by early summer, we had set our, where we're going to have our class division line. So it was, okay, the top 64 schools are going to be in 2A, because that kind of gave us, based on the math that we had from the year before, because really all we can do is look at the year before. There's only so much forecasting you can do with these situations. So that kind of felt like the right spot. Well, so what you don't anticipate then after that is 30 programs either, essentially popping up after that. So they're either new programs or they have gone out of their cooperative sharing agreement, changed their cooperative sharing agreement. So all of a sudden we've got 30 more roughly than what we did last year, and it's just like, oh, okay. So this, obviously changes the makeup of some things, and so we knew we were going to just have to ride that wave out. But I was like, yeah, had I known we were going to have 30, if I could set that line at the beginning of November, which we can't do, it's like, if I could set it then when I knew exactly what we were working with, this would look different. But people then, they wait for you to make that move so then they can make those decisions about their program. Some people didn't care if they were 1A and 2A. Some people really cared. So it was, that's, again, when we make some decisions moving forward about if we expand that 2A class, what that looks like, we will have more moving and shaking and adjustments based on that too.
So I want to talk a little bit about your background here. Just to mention, let everybody know, in May of 2024, you became the sixth executive director in the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union. And for people, they should know this, in case they don't. Iowa is so unique because it's really the only state that has a union dedicated strictly for female athletics at the high school level. In 2023, you received the Charlotte Bailey Award from the Iowa Wrestling Coaches and Officials Association. Also received the Empowerment Award from the AAU Women's Wrestling. The former AD at Panorama, and you were the first women's president of the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association when you served 22 and 23. Great accomplishments there. I want to know when, because talking to you when you were just a sports administrator for wrestling, your passion for wrestling seemed to be palpable. When we were doing stories of in the middle of the growth. But how did wrestling become something that you became impassioned about?
That's a fantastic question, because I was never a wrestler myself. I usually, when somebody asks me that, my interest in wrestling started when I was in 2nd grade. We had a sign up sheet, for youth wrestling, whatever. And so I remember putting my name down on the sheet. One of my other little girlfriends at the time put her name down. She was a great gymnast. Like she fit the mold, right? I was I was just a runt. So I was like, yeah, this is cool. And so I went home and I remember telling my parents that was something I wanted to do. And my parents they were both athletes, but they were both basketball players. And they're like, yeah, it's not going to work. We're not doing that. They just, it was a little bit foreign to them. It's not that they just really were discouraging, but they were like, yeah, you're going to do some basketball, right? We're going to whatever. My older sister played basketball, it was just like, that's what it was. But I remember being interested in it from an early age. Like, it was intriguing to me. And, we had, again, small school, you're going to all the wrestling meets, you're watching all of your friends participate, the guys, that kind of stuff. I remember a couple different times in high school. I think that's when it was like the 103-pound class for boys or whatnot at that time. And my PE teacher was the wrestling coach, and he was like, hey, we need you want to jump in there at 103 ever, let us know. And, I was just always kind of like, yeah, in the back of my brain, like, that would be really cool. That'd be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But you just didn't see other girls doing it. And so for me, it was just like, yeah, that's not really a thing. So I went to Iowa State, and I went into athletic training. And so part of your rotations there is you get assigned with different sports, things like that. So I was assigned with wrestling for, I don't know if it was like my junior year or something like that. I'm blurry on that. I think it was, but it was, it was a really cool time to be a part of Iowa State wrestling, because Bobby Douglas was still the coach.
Oh.
Cale Sanderson was the assistant coach. So you get both of those guys in the room, which was awesome. You had this really awesome incoming freshman class of like Jake Varner. I'm trying to think of, it was like the youngest Sanderson kid. And then, Mitch Mueller, some of these guys now that you're seeing like around the state, and Jesse Sundell was already there. But you had the Gallic boys, you had the Paulsons that were already there. It was like an incredible makeup of a team. Right. Yeah. And so it was really fun just to be able to be in those practices. As an athletic trainer, then, we are in on all of the weight certifications, right? Like, that whole process was really intriguing to me. And so you are tasked with kind of this other nutritional component when you're, in that space as an athletic trainer, and helping them kind of monitor their weight and some of those types of things. But what I loved about wrestling that felt different than a lot of other sports was that as an athletic trainer, it was a fantastic challenge, right? Of like, you had to keep these people held together because they were going to go out on the mat no matter what. So like, it's your job to figure out how they can best compete, because it's like already in their brain of like, oh, I'm competing. Now you have to figure out how to get me there. You have to figure out how I can do this at the highest level possible. And so, and then you obviously, you got so much, blood and injury that you're working with. It's like an athletic trainer's dream. Right. And so I had such a respect for the sport at that point because of what these athletes were willing to do to really push themselves. But then I felt like my importance in that role of just being able, like I said, to keep them going was awesome. And so I was all in. I thought it was an incredible experience. And then when I went down to Oklahoma State, I worked with their football program when I was getting my master's, and then ultimately ended up working with their women's basketball program. But at the time, we were sharing an athletic training room. And so they had known that I had had some wrestling experience and background. So when our wrestling athletic trainer would have to be somewhere else or had something come up, like I would help with that. I would help with the wrestling camps during the summer. And just those guys then too, your Coleman Scotts, again, just these names that are, you look around the world of wrestling today and they're right there, So for me to be able to work with some of the greatest coaches and, be in a space with John Smith, it's cool. It helps you stay engaged with the sport. And then coming back when I was an athletic administrator and athletic trainer at Panorama, just understanding then how important the sport of wrestling is to our state. I feel like I really wanted to promote that within our school as well.
I after listening to your story, I can't help but wonder if your parents thought they shot an air ball with you when they said that's wrestling's not for you.
I don't know. I probably would have been like the mouthy one that got kicked out. I would have probably been biting. I don't know. I was definitely, I do get a little sad that I didn't get to experience that myself, because I do think, I loved basketball, but it was because I loved my team. It wasn't because my name's on the record board. I think wrestling probably would have been my jam for sure.
And I think you left out one component that at least that I'm aware of your husband.
Oh yeah, no, ex-husband.
Oh, ex-husband. Oh, oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's fine.
Was also a wrestling coach there, so the connection
Yeah,
there.
yeah, no, that's fine. Nope. And I have two stepsons then that were wrestlers, and so it was a big family component. So, but definitely gave me more of an inside look on all of that. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to change it just a little bit. I'm sorry, KJ.
Go ahead.
I'm curious on how the regionals. I'm kind of changing direction here. How the regionals line up and what's the process with deciding that? Because
Oh yeah.
I was kind of looking at the area schools around Cedar Rapids, and they were scattered. Some go over to Mason City, and
Yeah.
so I'm just curious what that process is.
Yeah, it's a really challenging process. Last year, I think it was probably, I don't want to say it was like a little bit easier, but last year when we had the super regional concept and the year before, it was, we basically at that point when we're working in one class, we just kind of decided, okay, from a travel and logistics standpoint, it makes sense for these teams to go to Sioux City, right? And so then when I'm looking at, who I have taken to Sioux City, then I had the ability last year to say, okay, they're going region 1 or region 2, right? So it's like boom, 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 going back and forth. And I can kind of then place everybody a little bit so that we have a matrix. This is kind of really getting into the weeds of it, but I think it's an important part of the conversation. We put out, because again, we don't know what we're working with, and we can't just assume that what we have there is, full teams. Like on the boys, when you assign a team somewhere, a school somewhere, you assume that they're going to have a pretty full team. We can't assume that on the girls' side. So we, the last couple of years, we have put a survey out to coaches and asked them to fill out a participation form that they submit to us by the middle of December. And it kind of gives a breakdown of where they anticipate athletes will go. And so again, it's not 100% spot on, but if they have a 100-pounder and a 235-pounder and that's all that's competing for them, okay, we know that they've got 2 athletes and this is where they intend to go. So we look at the size of what that school is bringing, right? Because we want to try to get as equitable as we can in terms of the amount of wrestlers at one site. And then we also go through and we take rankings and we look at those individual rankings. And then, we try to get it so that, the top competitors aren't competing against each other. And so what's hard is when they say, oh, we've got 30 ranked individuals here. Okay, well, are they 30 ranked individuals across 15? Across 14 weight classes? That looks a little different than, even 15 ranked individuals in 3 weight classes, right? So we tried to spread it out so there is, if they're going to have to compete against each other, that the brackets themselves aren't overly stacked with some of that. So what gets hard with that is because we release it before Christmas. So we've got about 4 or 5 weeks of data that we're putting together as far as their competition. And so you don't really know where people are going to end up, right? All you have to work on is where they're at. So kind of getting into what's different than from last year is we were able to take the top 4 competitors from each of those sites, and then that made up our 32, right? And that felt easier in some ways because it was like, well, if you're not the top 4, you're probably not going to get on a podium at state, and it's not really realistic. The problem that we ran into that with super regionals is that it wasn't a sustainable model. We were spending $100,000 every year on super regionals, and really we want our regions to be our schools to host that like they do, for all of our other sports. That's something that when they have got great facilities, they take a lot of pride in hosting tournaments. We want to give those to the schools to be able to run. So we finally felt like, okay, when we break up into 2 classes, we can give those to our schools to run. So then we have a process of, we knew we needed schools in 1A to be able to have 4 mats. We knew we needed schools in 2A to be able to have 3 mats to start. And so that really cuts down on the amount of people who are willing to host, And so, again, they put in this whole process for it. I think we had maybe around 30 schools or so that had put their name in to host. We have all these conversations with them about whether or not that they would be a good fit. And then you're kind of at the mercy of your host schools and their locations about where you're sending people. We don't like to send people more than two and a half hours to go somewhere. We don't like to do that. It's hard to explain to people when they're driving by 3 different other regions of why they're going somewhere else, and some of it is because we had a full team and we needed more bodies at this site. It gets complicated. And so I think, obviously we heard a lot from Northeast Iowa and Eastern Iowa in general about, gosh, our stuff's stacked over here and we're overloaded over here. Well, you guys, they basically had the facilities to run it, and 70% of our population and our, even more of that of our ranked athletes are in Eastern Iowa, and so that's where it gets really tricky. So I think next year, we're going to have the conversation of trying to, our perimeter schools that hosted did a fantastic job for us. We love that they host. Red Oak doesn't get to host a lot of things for us, and so we were really happy to have them. Sioux Center did a great job of hosting for us. But so is the thought process then for us, if we can get some schools who aren't so far on the perimeter of our states to be able to host a little bit more, then we'll have some flexibility in that. Also, we like to give schools, who are usually, more of your perennial powerhouses, the ability to host. We sometimes think that they have earned the right to host, or they're just the ones who are familiar with that space and they run a lot of tournaments. We have found out that maybe that's, if maybe we need to avoid that in the future, because then we have the flexibility to send them other places and protect them in different ways. So we've learned a lot from this year. It was obviously really hard when you go from qualifying 4 at a site to qualifying 2 at a site, but for me, it's like for years have watched my stepsons get 3rd. That is heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking. And they're better than other kids that got to the state tournament. And that is part of the reality of the sport. We don't love that. We don't love those statistics, but that's part of the reality, especially where we're at right now. So I think obviously, if I had the information that I had now, when we were setting things up, could have probably done it a little differently, but it would have made other people unhappy. It would have, swayed it in different ways there. So I think that what we do moving forward is just take the data. We've got really, really good data coming off of this year that we've already combed through, and make some really good decisions for what we need to do for next year.
Yeah. Speaking of, I think the 2-class split maybe came a little bit faster than I thought it would happen. Of course, the numbers have grown. Some little birdies are already chatting about the possibility of a 3rd class in the near future. Mm-hmm. What would that take, or what kind of threshold would you be looking at for that kind of expansion going forward too? Yeah,
that's a really great question, because those are the things that we're wondering too. So what we're looking for, when we made the move to 2 classes, the coaches really wanted that. Like they were, and I don't even know if they really knew what they were asking for or what that would look like, but that to them felt like they were like, man, we're so big, and in comparison to some other sports, and like we just, we want some competitive equity, and we want some of this and that, okay, great. So we had the ability to do that last year, but what we really look for are those regional numbers, right? So I know next year we're not going to be in 3 classes because our regional brackets don't support that at this point, right? The average, I think we were at, for 2A, the average bracket size was 6.3. For 1A, our average bracket size was 9.9. So our goal is going to be for next year to get those closer together as far as our average bracket size. That's really what makes sense. And so we've got to kind of comb through how the best way to do that is, while using the data from last year, forecasting a little for next year. We're going to put out a really good comprehensive survey at the end of the season to really get some a jump start on that process, I think. But so we don't, I can just look at this and say, okay, if we had 3 classes, there's no way we would have the brackets. It would be a joke, right? There are people who not only their records would indicate that they probably aren't at that state level, but then also it's like, if we're having 3 or 4 kids in a bracket and we're, qualifying the top 2, it's like if we're qualifying half of our kids, that's not a great look.
So I've got a question for you. I know this isn't probably as hectic as maybe volleyball week, which is such a fun uh, competition to attend as well. How do you stay? How do you keep your energy up for a state tournament? Is it coffee, energy drinks,
No,
Mountain
no, no,
Dew?
no, no. It's trying to get enough sleep. Honestly,
Okay,
like I'm to the point in my life, I'm in my 40s now. So it's like, I never was big on the energy drinks because I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I have actually scaled back on my coffee, which gives me more energy,
really?
honestly. And I'm an early riser. I like to get up. I like to get on the treadmill. I like to get a little workout in. I'm a cold plunger. I
Really?
really yeah, it's these things that you discover along the way, right? um, I think it's really important for us, and we talk about this as a staff too, of just really taking care of ourselves because we've got somebody that's got he's working remotely today because he's got kind of some of the crud, and I'm like, stay away, this is our game time, stay away, right?
Yeah.
So we take a lot of pride. We got our vitamin C packets, our emergency, all that kind of stuff in the break room. But we really try to focus on trying to work ahead as much as possible, because we know there's things we're going to have to grind out, right? That are last minute stuff, our programs, that kind of stuff that we're putting together. So I'm somebody that I'm up usually before 5, because that's just my internal alarm clock. But that means I got to be in bed at 10, 9:30, 10, and I'm good with that. That's how I operate in, because these weeks do get crazy, and we have really long days, and obviously you're there, KJ, with volleyball, with
Mhm.
basketball. It's a week long. What gets so hectic with wrestling is, for the most part, for our other sports, there's a sense of copy and paste, right? From the year before, we copy and paste, and we're always changing things, we're always making improvements, but we know what that's going to look and feel like, right? Wrestling is still so wild west that's where it gets hectic for us, is just the stress of the unknown, trying to anticipate all of these things, trying to get ahead of it, and then working with every year this other group of coaches that has rarely checked their email all year, that has no idea what the process is, that has even though we lay out the webinars, we post things like crazy on our website, we give the Monday minute breakdown of all of our reminders, it's like we spoon feed people information, and yet we're still communicating with a lot of ghosts. So that to me is the most stressful part of wrestling. Madison Melcher from our office has done a phenomenal job of stepping in, helping to start the sport administrator, do a lot of those things, because it's like we need more hands and more bodies. And we are going to grow that again for next year. And we'll have some announcements coming about what our staffing looks like here in the next couple of months, because while wrestling may not be as big as some of our other sports, it's taking the most time and energy right now because of all of the unknowns, because of all the coaches' education that we need to have out there, because of all of the checking that we've got to do within track wrestling.
Mhm.
I feel so strongly about having our own in-house ranking system, and so, but like looking at what we've got to offer within our office right now, we don't have the manpower to be able to do that. So staffing ourselves correctly so that we can get some of these things done is really kind of a big top priority for us going into next year. It's being able to give wrestling the support that it needs, because it's a lot of troubleshooting. It's a lot of not just telling somebody whether their athlete's eligible for this weight class or not. It's actually then going in and explaining to them all of the details of a weight descent plan and what that looks like and what they can and can't do, because it may just be the PE teacher who is graciously signed up to be a coach and help them out because they need somebody to run the program. So we really try to meet people where they are, but that really takes a lot of time and energy from our staff. So we've got to be more prepared for that moving forward.
Right. And KJ, can you tell that she's a trainer with her habits that she talked about?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. And I like when you say you're ahead of the game. I have one other question, and that is, we mentioned Charlotte Bailey earlier, and I know Bruce Ennin is the lead on your officiating. Are there any other key players you want to mention that have helped along the way?
You're gonna get me in trouble, because this is what happens. Like, I start to list off people, and then you forget somebody and they're heartbroken, right? I would just say collectively, the people who have been really integral in this process from the start to finish, right? So obviously you've named Charlotte Bailey. She was so integral, and she still helps us assign our workers at state. Like, she's still on the ground floor helping us do a lot of the things there with her connections in Iowa City, and just her knowledge of people who can also get the job done. So she has been great. But also, the whole IWCOA, their family, that family of wrestling coaches and officials, that is such an interesting makeup in general. Usually your associations are separate, right? I think baseball might be the only other one that has like coaches and officials together. So they are this kind of conglomerate of, they cross streams a lot. And that's not a bad thing. It's just part of what it is. But that has given me an inside network to our officials, which is fantastic. We're honoring them as some of our grand marshals at the parade this year, which is, again, the more that we can, hats off to our officials. They have done so much. Bruce Ennin has done so much for our sport. But within two, we have our girls wrestling advisory committee. So we have, a handful plus of people who have been on that committee from conception, right? And so this is their last year of serving on that, but they have been coaches who have just, again, been in the weeds with us and trying to make these decisions, help us forecast. Normally our advisory committees from our coaches standpoint meet once a year. I think that first year with wrestling, we met 3 or 4 times, and the second year we met a couple of times. The third year we met a couple of times. I think just this past year we have just met once, which is great, but still getting feedback from them all the time. And they have been then also key players. We kind of tasked them as well with also then going to the IWCOA and representing girls wrestling on the IWCOA portion of it too, because they had all of the information and they knew what was going on with our sport. So they were serving double duties, and now they've kind of started to transition some more people in from the IWCOA standpoint there. But obviously, like, Louis Curtis has been so fantastic, right? And so he's the wrestling administrator on the boys side, but he was passionate about girls wrestling when it was on their side of things, right? And when it was one of those things, when he knew that we were getting ready to sanction it, he was part of those conversations because he had been the administrator over all of the athletes at that point. And so I applaud him of, like, he was like, yes, take this thing and grow it and give it a home and let it, do all of these good things for it. I think he was proud to house it while it was under him, but I think he knew that it needed more. So even to this day, Louis and I talk almost daily when it comes, when we're in wrestling season, or him and Madison have talked, and they have been great supporters of what we're trying to do. So I give props to the Boys Association in that, of including us in on some of those decisions that they're making, so that we're not left on an island in some of those things that we need to do together. So, I don't, Matt Shannon, if you guys are familiar with Matt Shannon,
Oh yeah,
that man does more for the sport of wrestling. And it was funny because Clint Kudum from Sergeant Bluff was, he is somebody that's been from an IWCOA rep. He's been on our girls union committee. And so I remember one of the first conversations I had with him, he's like, Matt Shannon, get Matt Shannon to run all of your stuff, pay him whatever he needs, and like turn him loose, because he is incredible and he will do awesome work for you. And that's probably some of the best advice that we got. He's an incredible asset to us, especially as we are going through this postseason and we get a million questions about, why is my kid seated this way? And he responds back to every single person in detail, in breakdown of the seating placement. And he educates those coaches so much on that, in addition to running our tournaments. I cannot imagine trying to do this without somebody like Matt Shannon, and his crew of people have been fantastic. obviously our partners at Extreme Arena, and Think Iowa City and Coralville. I mean, like that is Wrestletown USA. So for us to be able to roll out a state wrestling championship for our girls in Wrestletown USA, that's insane, right? That is they are wrestling where people want to wrestle, right? And so they are getting access to things that no other, other people across the country should be completely jealous of. So they make us so comfortable. I mean, we were just FaceTiming with them, and they're sending pictures of like they've already basically got our arena set up, right? And they're fine tuning things, and they're spending money on mats for us, and they're putting money towards scholarships. They're doing all of these incredible things, not just to make sure that our program runs well, but so that the sport of wrestling continues to grow from a very unselfish standpoint. So our friends over there, they feel like an extension of our office. And then obviously I gotta give props to everybody in our office. Oh my gosh, that they will probably say like, wrestling terrifies them because of the emails that we get, because of the foreignness of the sport to a lot of people. And so, but they have completely embraced it. They have completely understood the importance that girls wrestling plays for our organization and how important it is for us to show up for them, whether or not everybody in the room is comfortable with it or not. They are, like I said, they're like gamers, right? So they understand that regardless of if they, if they're in a gym watching the girls compete or not, they understand what this moment means to them. So they all, our staff always shows up big for each other and for everybody in that space. So again, I'm sure I'm leaving out everyone, our media outlets, all of those great things. We've got great coverage of the sport, which is really, really important to us as well.
Thanks for the plug on that one too. Check is in the mail for that. But this, okay. So Thursday action begins. Session 1, which is Class 2A this year, 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Of course, Extreme Arena in Coralville. Session 2 on Thursday will be Class 1A from 4:30 to 9 p.m. That'll include the quarterfinals, first round consolation, second round consolation. On Friday, Session 3 begins at 10 a.m. Class 1A and 2A championship semifinals, third round consolation semifinals, and then seventh place matches. And then the crown jewel Friday night starting at 6 p.m. The Class 1A and 2A finals, third and fifth place matches as well. Erin, it's going to be a little bit different with the two classes going on, different sessions, but what can people kind of look forward to? And, how is this going to be a little bit of a different experience with just the two classes going on?
Yeah. We always try to do things. We always try to, one up ourselves every year. Right. So I won't give away all of the detail because we want it to be on the finals, which, by the way, if people don't understand this or know this, all of our stuff is free to stream. We have our digital network that comes over and they stream all of our sessions. We've got commentators for all of it. So that's at the top of our website. Obviously we want people to be there. We want people to buy tickets, but we also just really want people to see these girls highlighted and showcased throughout the entire tournament. So we've got a lot of resources put into that. And so if you can't make it there, my favorite thing about it is when I get texts from ADs or other people of, they might be in the corner of the state and they're girls wrestling and they might just have one qualifier and like the whole, lunchroom is watching on the screen as this girl, is wrestling. And it's really cool, to be able to offer that to people who can't get there because the sport is still visible and we give them that platform. But so again, that is on our website and will continue to be a button on the top there throughout the duration of our tournament. But, we're doing some things again to kind of highlight the finals. And, we got some questions about like, why don't you just have 2 championship matches? Because we're running a dog bone shape, right, for the finals.
Right.
So we've got class 1A and class 2A, and then we've got, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th matches. In addition to, we'll have in the center spaces, we'll have our championship matches. So we're going to do some fun things to highlight those championship matches above and beyond what we've done before. But when people ask questions about that, I think when we go to 3 classes, we'll just have the 3 mats for the championships. That feels like a natural thing. But what's so amazing about that arena is when it is packed and when there is so much wrestling taking place, and it is just deafening, right? The energy that is brought to that. So we really felt strongly about, we didn't want to lose that energy for our championship matches. We like to have a ton of wrestling happening, and still be able to highlight those center matches. So we'll be bringing some extra special things to that center, those center matches, and doing some fun things there. But we try to make it again all about the kids, and some about the officials, some about the coaches and their recognition in those spaces. But I think it's going to be, it's going to be wild again this year. And some people feel like it's a little chaotic. Some people are frustrated by, running out of nacho cheese or running out of some toilet paper in the bathroom. And some people are frustrated when they got to sit shoulder to shoulder with people. But I think for the most part, it provides this atmosphere that feels like wrestling right now, a little wild, a little chaotic, and really how most wrestlers prefer it. So we're going to embrace it.
With your dog bone setup, that's very similar to the NCAA semifinals, which in my opinion is the most exciting round.
Correct.
For the reasons
Correct.
you just said. Okay,
I know.
One last question. It's a yes or no question. You don't have to go any further. Just yes or no. Do you anticipate, or do you foresee the need to go to a bigger arena sometime down the road?
I hope we do. I hope we have that problem, right? Which is fantastic. And then I hope we get our pick on where we want to go with that. I hope everybody wants us so bad and sees what an awesome product that we have, that people are bidding through the roof to get us there. So, but again, this is part of the litmus test of going to 2 classes. How does this look in terms of, if we went 2 classes and went to Wells Fargo Arena, we would be barely filling part of that bottom bowl, and that would feel empty, and that wouldn't feel right. So we're going to have to be bursting. We're going to have to find something that feels like it really continues to enhance the environment that we're providing. And then we'll go from there. So if anybody wants to start building anything, that's what I throw out there. We'll give you the specs to build a perfect arena for us if anybody wants to do that.
I think we have a little bit bigger one here in Cedar Rapids. I don't know, but I'm just.
It is just a little bit bigger. It is just a little bit bigger, but not by much.
I will throw this in really quick. I think one of the coolest things that has accompanied the girls' state tournament, the wrestlers being able to sign their brackets. Who came up with that idea? I know some
funny.
passed, but I think it's a cool tradition, and always love getting video and pictures of wrestlers signing their brackets as they advance.
I got to speak to this because it's so funny to think about that, right? So we started doing like bracket advancing for our tournaments in volleyball and in basketball, more of our team sports, right? And so but we knew how excited girls were to do that. So wrestling obviously being a bracketed sport, and the bracketing being part of that tradition. So when we're starting to conceptualize this and plan for that first year, I'm like, okay, do we go with the calligraphy? And that's always nice. That always feels like the traditional aspect of things. And then we had spent so much money on super regionals, and we had spent so much money on all of these things. where we were really, I don't want to say like cutting corners, but really having to be mindful of our budget. And so the executive director at the time, Jean, looks at me and she's like, we are not paying for somebody to ride on these things. Figure it out. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And so Heidi in our office, she's the one who normally she'll come up with the stickers for the brackets, right? And so every round, then we would have more stickers for our teams and the stuff. And so she's looking at me and she's like, oh my gosh, I have to make stickers for all of these rounds of all of these people and all, I mean, it's like a very overwhelming thing. I don't know, Heidi. Okay, we got to figure this out. And so we just kind of said, it was like kind of like it was almost I was visualizing the tunnel and stuff from the year before the IWCOA tournament of like I always thought it would be cool to have like this championship tunnel that like the champion runs out of, right? It's almost like this grand exit tunnel. And so in my brain, I was like, okay, what if we just have the, on these easels, we'll have these things standing up and we'll send our champions down this way. And as they do it, maybe it'll be like almost like a marker board and they sign it. I don't know. Like we got to figure this out. Girls typically have better handwriting than boys. So maybe this will go a little bit better. So then we literally get there, they were setting up and we've got these things and they're like not sitting on easels well. This whole concept is not really coming together. And so we're walking that back hallway and it's just like this epiphany. What if we just put it on the wall? Okay, what if we make this a VIP experience? We stanchion it off, we put these things up there and then we just direct them there and they're going to sign it. And that's what they do. And then they have, what I liked about it is like thinking of, and it's a permanent signature. And then when you have that as the person who is the champion at the end of the night, you have everybody's signature that you just dominated. And that to me felt like this, like, ooh, that feels cool.
Yeah.
So it literally came together at the very last minute. Again, we were like, do we hold it up there and they sign on the podium? Do we, like, what do we do? So it's now bracket row, as we call it, has been like an awesome photo op. It took a little bit of catching on for those kids. Like after that, they're like, you want us to do what? And they're like, girl last year came, she's like, I'm practicing my signature. And I was like, this is fantastic. So, but we always say too, Gary from our office runs bracket row. That first year he wore khaki pants. And he kept putting the markers in his pants. And so it was like, we got to get him new pants because he kept forgetting to put the lids on. He got all this black Sharpie ink all over his pants. So it was great. So we always put that in the thing of like, Gary, don't forget your dark pants. No, that's the long story of it. But I feel like it's such a cool thing because it's become the highlight of that tournament. And we, girls, if they don't want to sign it, no big deal. Some of them get superstitious. Some of them like have feelings about that. Great. We'll sign it for you. Move on. No big deal. But to present them with that at the end is pretty cool. The majority of them really love that.
Awesome. Well, Erin, I really appreciate you taking the time out and chatting with us. Absolutely great to hear from you and talk about the event coming up and girls wrestling in general. Can't wait for the girls union and the high school athletes and families and programs to get to Coralville and paint the town pink for the Iowa Girl here Thursday and Friday at Extreme Arena. Again, thank you very much and have a great time Thursday and Friday at the Girls State Wrestling Tournament.
Absolutely, guys. It has been absolutely my pleasure. Obviously, I could talk about wrestling all day. So, but no, thank you guys for what you do, giving us the platform. All wrestlers, it's a really special thing that you all do. So, really looking forward to seeing you guys this weekend.
All right, thank you very much. That's
Yeah,
Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union Executive Director Erin Gerlich.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
What a fun conversation. You could just feel the excitement that she has, the energy that she's put into the sport since being a key component with the girls union and getting it sanctioned and now leading the girls union as wrestling continues to grow.
It's kind of interesting that the people that we've interviewed have all brought that energy, haven't they, KJ? She's no exception. I would have loved to have been a wrestler at Iowa State when she was a trainer or down at Oklahoma State. Because I just want to be around her. She just is that kind of person and just brings it. So, and boy, did she enlighten me with a lot of things I was not aware of. So,
yeah,
regarding the girls wrestling. Cool.
Very fun. Needless to say, our longest interview to date. That just that was fun. A lot of information there, and of course, this Thursday and Friday, the girls' high school tournament at Extreme Arena in Coralville begins. I'll look again here. I believe 10 a.m. on Thursday with the first session. Looking here, of course, all this information is at the Girls Union website, IGHSAU.org. Squares at the top you can click on to get tournament information and ticket information. And it is 10 o'clock Thursday, the first session, which is Class 2A, and then first session or the second session and the first round for Class 1A begins at 4:30 p.m. on Thursday.
Man, I would love to see or hear. I won't be able to see, right? I would love to hear of all of the schools that have that feed up in their lunchrooms and maybe in their classrooms, so that when their wrestler gets up, they can take a minute or two from class and watch the girls compete. I think that's incredibly cool.
That would be really cool.
I'm glad they provide that.
Well, let's just kind of glance over the college and high school on the boys' side happenings this last week. Of course, the biggie in State College, Pennsylvania. Number 1 Penn State over number 2 Iowa shows the mammoth gap between number 1 and number 2. Penn State winning 8 of 10 matches against the Hawkeyes there. So just kind of
KJ,
just kind of a big gap there.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it out loud. A lot of people probably thinking it. A lot of people watched it. If they're not looking through too dark of black and gold glasses, Iowa didn't look good. They did not look good, and you could tell it. I mean, with he so much as. Well, I guess he did say it. Coach Brands did say it. But I can't remember when I've seen an Iowa team broken like that. And is that a testament to how good Penn State is? But even still, I hate to say this, but I saw quit in the middle of the match. Both were down, laying on bellies, not building bases. Now, I got 3 weights that weren't 33, 84, 97. Not an issue, at least not in that meet. I didn't think. But
right.
And maybe 1 or 2 others. I just did that off the top of my head. But there's a lot of unlike Iowa, man, to just fold up camp and not finish out the match.
Yeah, I would agree with you on those. Teamer give Teamer a pass a little bit. 57, given kind of the situation where he was off for 2 months, had 1 match, wrestling a very, very good opponent in Kasich, and it was a decision. However, that's still got to be a disappointing result there. But I agree with you. I also think, not that it's a glass half empty, glass half full thing, because I'm sure nobody's hanging their hat on this. As big of a gap as there is between 1 and 2, I think there's even a bigger gap between 3 and the rest of the field. I think it's Penn State, obviously, and it showed here. And then Iowa and Okie State, I think, are head and shoulders above the rest.
They're ahead of the rest. I think you and I fared well against Okie State, but certainly not in their league yet. But so I would agree, and we're going to find out 2 and 3 here, in a week and a half or whatever it is. 2.5.
Yeah. Actually, right after the boys' state tournament, that's Sunday on the 23rd. So we'll get to see that as well. And then Iowa, they bounce back. A big win over Maryland. Maryland, which was ranked 25th. They won 8 of 10 there. Miguel Estrada, the interesting thing there, Miguel Estrada wrestling and burning his red shirt, and Teamer not wrestling. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of progresses here over the next month. And if Teamer, I don't know if he tweaks something, if it was just natural to do that, and bring Estrada in or what, we'll see. And then Cale Peterson wrestling for Ayala, who, sat out the Ohio State duel. So I don't think I think we'll see Ayala back soon when needed. Teamer, I think there's a little bit of a question mark there. Now, the one other thing that kind of came up, all the buzz before the duel with what Gabe Arnold said after the Ohio State meet and the bantering back and forth briefly leading up to the duel with Strocci and Arnold. Ferrari gets the nod against Strocci. Strocci wins 2-1. Arnold comes back Sunday, gets a win over a ranked Jackson Smith in tiebreaker 1. Tom Brands did say they're going to use Ferrari's matches that's available to him before without burning his red shirt, and Gabe's going to be the guy wrestling in the postseason. Thoughts on how that kind of played out?
Oh boy. Okay, so I'll start with this. I think Arnold was wrong for coming out and saying that in the press conference when he knew that there was a possibility that he couldn't wrestle. I think that it's still the coach's decision based on how I see the things operate, at the college level and certainly at Iowa. And and if Ferrari, if they want to try and keep both Arnold and Ferrari happy, you want to give Ferrari his 5 matches or 5 matches, and then still be able to put Arnold out. And Arnold has to get ready because he's going to be the guy at Big Tens and at Nationals. So he's got to put this behind him, which I'm sure he will, and move forward. How that will affect things in the off season, whether one will decide to leave or two, or both will decide to stay or whatever, I don't know. In this day and age, you just don't know with NIL and so forth. But it certainly made it kind of interesting, I have to say, when he came out and said that at the press conference. But and then actually and shame on everyone that's getting down on Arnold. He shouldn't have probably said that if he didn't know he was going to wrestle, but he didn't know. And so everyone's kind of getting down on him, and I'm like, nah, you guys need to back off, if you ask me.
Let's take a look at you and I. You and I went out to West Virginia, got a win over the number 21 Mountaineers, 29-10. The thing that stands out more than 5th ranked you and I going out there, improving to 11-1 overall, 5-1 in the Big 12. The travel situations. Did you read about or hear Doug Schwab's press conference Monday?
I did not.
About the challenges that they faced.
No, I did not.
So they originally, I believe they're supposed to fly out of Cedar Rapids. That flight got canceled. They had to drive to Minneapolis, so go 3 hours, 3 times as far in the opposite direction to fly out of Minneapolis. Their first flight out of Minneapolis was canceled. Then they had to wait, get a flight to Philadelphia, then hit a connecting flight that sent them to Pittsburgh, and then drove to Morgantown from Pittsburgh. As Doug said, they got in late, but the team, just took it in stride. Dealt with the situations, didn't put their head down, didn't make any excuses or complain about it. They just dealt with it, and then they dealt with the Mountaineers afterwards, which I like Schwab, what he said, where he kind of shrugged it off and said, well, okay, we get to spend more time together. So that's the plus. It's all about perspective, I guess. And
yeah, I love that.
Handled it.
I'm guessing that was Thursday night, right? That's probably about the time you and I were driving back from Prairie on 76th Street when it was.
And we couldn't see because of the fog.
100 yards in front of us. That's just north of the airport there. So I'm not surprised to hear any planes couldn't get out. But drive down to Cedar Rapids and then have to turn around and drive back up to Minneapolis and then all the other things. Wow, that's unfortunate. But the only thing is if rustlers are hungry and thirsty, it can get kind of miserable. But otherwise,
right, cut weight.
Right. Make the best out of it.
So good performance there by you and I. Just want to mention really quickly, the Iowa women went and competed at the Grandview Open in Des Moines. They received titles from Ryan Murphy, Ava Bayless, Riesler Mendy, Naomi Simon, and Katja Osteen. Just kind of looking, I know Osteen beat teammate Olivia White in the finals there. Simon had 2 pins and 2 techs on her way to the 180-pound title. Their next competition is the Region 7 tournament, February 22nd in Indianola, hosted by Simpson. Also want to mention that Upper Iowa on Sunday, they defeated Maryville 24-13. They moved to 11-4 overall, 4-0 in the Great Lakes Valley Conference. And the thing that stands out about that 4-0 mark is enough to clinch the regular season dual title in their first since moving to the GLVC. So good job to Keith Grimm and the Peacocks accomplishing that. And then high school, unless you have any other college things to touch on,
just
before we mention high school.
Two brief ones. Cornell was in the Pete Wilson, which is a 30-team tournament. They finished 4th, so I think that's very noteworthy. We talked about
Brett yep.
And their highest finish was a 165 with Brian Petrie was 2nd, and they had 6 in the top 8. So did a good job there. Cornell really did. And then there was another 1 versus 2, also actually 3 of them, but that involved Iowa schools. Number 1, Augsburg in Wartburg in the Battle of the Bergs. That was after our last
that's right
podcast. But Augsburg won 6 of the first 7 matches and really kind of put it to Wartburg a little bit, 22-13. And they had wrestled before and it was 17-16, so they separated that gap quite a bit. So Augsburg won the Battle of the Bergs there.
Okay. Briefly for the boys wrestling, it was a conference tournament time here. We were both at the MVC tournament at Xavier. No real surprise. Linmark comes away with a team title. They had 2 champions in Malik DeBow at 126 and Barrett Miras at 165. Iowa City West was 2nd with 3 champs. Alexander Pierce, 113, who beat 2-time state medalist Dylan Munson from Prairie in the final. And then Cole Crutzfield at 138 and Justin Avila at 150, won titles for the Trojans. Pierce and DeBow each won their 3rd MVC title, individual title. The interesting thing there is Iowa City West got a tech from Cole Crutzfield. I believe did Pierce come away with a major against Munson?
I don't recall, KJ.
But I know Avila won by major in his final, and the reason why I bring those up is they held off Xavier by a half a point. Xavier finishing 3rd, their best finish ever. They've kind of climbed up 7-5 and now 3 and just missed out on 2nd. Iowa City West held them off by half a point. Xavier had 2 champs in Dusty Cook at 190 and then John Goma at 215. Goma was named the outstanding wrestler, voted by the coaches. Just kind of looking here, Landon Bell, an outstanding tournament for the Iowa City Liberty 175-pounder. He beat ranked Philip Jacobs from Linmar, 21-13, I believe, in the semis, and then beat Loudon Bloxham of Prairie in the finals, who's also ranked 5-0 to win his first title. Never placed better than 5th in the MVC tournament. Avenged 2 losses to Jacobs earlier this year. I believe he lost by pin and then lost to Bloxham last year. So great performance by him. Prairie received the title from Chase Watkinson at 106, and Kendall Kurtz at 120, and Kane Willie at heavyweight won titles for Iowa City High.
Right. So I think eight schools had champions, if I remember right. And so another, lots of, correct, not parity, but lots of spread out, a lot of the wealth there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first 5 or 6, first 5 weight classes at least had champs from 5 different schools. So I always like seeing that. Of course, some of these schools will be wrestling in the regional dual field. This is Tuesday, February 4th, so that'll be tonight. So a quick turnaround for them, trying to get to the state duels, which is this Saturday on the tail end of the girls' 2-day state tournament. We'll touch on the regional fields just really quick after we talk about a couple other conference tournaments. We got WAMAC. That's won by Williamsburg for the first time under Coach Grant Eckenrod, who is a Benton alum, which is kind of cool. There, the Raiders come out on top of a really stacked field, which included Independence and West Delaware, I believe, tying for second. Really, really fun field there at Benton. And, of course, everything that we thought the WAMAC would be, it kind of was.
Again, we are half a point from third to second in the Valley. Independence and West Delaware tied for second. So we always said every point, every half a point matters. So
that's for sure.
Yep.
And then also looking at the Tri-Rivers, that was pretty much what we expected. Alburnett won the team title. 13 of their 14 wrestlers were either first or second at their respective weights. Rowdy Neighbor at 126, Preston Klosterman at 138, Cooper Tucker at 144, Dawson Becker at 157, Hunter Sauer at 165, and then Shaden Washburn at 175 came away with titles there. Lisbon was second in the team race overall.
Yeah, I mean that's those two, and I think they wrestled each other quite a bit in the finals, and so Oliver Burnett was 6 and Lisbon with 5 champs. So quite a ways back was North Lynn at third.
And then the River Valley Conference, that was won by Wilton. I believe maybe Anamosa, West Liberty.
West Branch. Then
West Branch was second.
Right? No, Anamosa second, West Branch third, West Liberty fourth. Yeah,
okay.
All the players.
Yeah, just a different order. So, yeah. And of course, we'll see them, all those teams in the regional duels. Just looking at it, this came out last week. In Class 3A, you've got number 22 Cedar Rapids Prairie and versus Fort Dodge. Southeast Polk will face the winner of those two. Site 2 at Waverly Shell Rock. The number 2 Go Hawks will face the winner of number 19 Western Dubuque and number 23 Dubuque Hempstead. At Indianola, you've got number 20 Urbandale and Iowa City High. The winner takes on the host third-ranked Indians. Linmar is our only area host. The Lions will face the winner of number 17, Bondurant Farrar, and number 18, North Scott. Cedar Rapids Xavier heads to Johnston. They'll face Dallas Center Grimes in a 15 versus 16 matchup in the semifinal. The winner will get number 5, Johnston. Ankeny Centennial and Lewis Central will wrestle in the semifinal. The winner will face number 6, Waukee Northwest. Pleasant Valley hosts Clear Creek Amana and Bettendorf, and will face the winner of those two. And then Carlisle will host the final regional, and they'll face the winner of number 9 Ankeny and number 11 Norwalk in Class 3A. What site stands out to you the most there?
I was just going to say, I wanted to add this. So Pleasant Valley, who's hosting but has Bettendorf, so Pleasant Valley 7, Bettendorf's 10, and then throw in Clear Creek Amana. But here's the reason I bring that up. In the MAC conference this weekend, North Scott, I'm going to take it back. So I think Bettendorf could upset PV. That's the one I'm looking at. Yep. Maybe Ankeny over Carlisle as well. So assuming they win their first meets.
Both of those two regionals should be really interesting to see how those play out.
Yeah.
In Class 2A, top-ranked Algona will host West Marshall and Crestwood. West Delaware, part of that WAMAC, 3 WAMAC schools are hosting. I think there are 6 in the field overall. I mean, it's crazy to think about. But West Delaware, they'll host number 20 North Fayette Valley, and number 22 Union. Tonight, Williamsburg, we mentioned them coming off their WAMAC tournament title, had all 14 wrestlers placed in that tournament, shows their balance and depth. The number 3 Raiders will face the winner of number 18 West Liberty and number 19 Anamosa. Those two teams were part of that River Valley Conference battle on Saturday. Sergeant Bluff Luton will host number 15 Ballard and number 24 Creston. Mentioned Independence. I will be heading up there tonight to cover the regional duel. The semifinal is number 16 Solon versus number 17 Benton, with the 5th-ranked Mustangs waiting for the winner in the final. Mount Vernon, ranked number 11th, will face number 12 Burlington Notre Dame. The winner will get number 6 Davenport Assumption. Winter set will host Eddyville, Blacksburg, Fremont, and Atlantic, and then Humboldt will host Clarion, Goldfield, Dow's, and Hampton, Dumont, Cal. Right now, the one that really kind of stands out to me, I think, is that Davenport Assumption one.
Yeah.
Burlington, Notre Dame, very dangerous team. Mount Vernon, they're ranked number 1 to start. And then Davenport Assumption, hearing that their lineup is a lot different than at the beginning of the year. So that one should be pretty competitive.
Right. Mount Vernon 11, Burlington Notre Dame 12. I don't know who's going to win that one, but I think the winner could beat Assumption, like you're suggesting. So I agree. That's one that stuck out to me.
In Class 1A, Alburnett, they're top ranked. They will face West Branch. As we mentioned, West Branch, their finish at the RVC tournament Saturday. Number 20 Bears face number 22 Iowa Valley in the semifinal, and then Alburnett awaits in the regional final. Don Bosco, number 2, they host number 17 Lawton Bronson, who's making a pretty long trip there from the Sioux City area, and number 18 Central Springs. Wilton, we mentioned they won the RVC. They will host number 14 Nottoway Valley and number 21 Truro Interstate 35. Jessup, ranked 4th, will host number 13 Lisbon and number 24 Westwood. Oakland Riverside has Underwood and Shenandoah. Osage, Denver and Alta Aurelia. Woodbury Central and Logan Magnolia will wrestle in the semifinal at number 7 Hinton. And then Lake Mills will host number 9 Nashville Plainfield and number 23 West Lyon. I think that Jessup, I think the one at Jessup will be kind of fun. With them going against Lisbon, I think they have a little too much for Lisbon though. But I'm also looking forward to that Nashua Plainfield. Coach Al Frost have his guys ready to roll at number 8 Lake Mills.
I don't know enough about those Western schools to have an opinion, I guess. I haven't paid attention. And so I fall back to that Jessup one. And I'm with you. I don't know that Lisbon has enough to overcome that. So I don't know that there'll be any upsets here. We'll have to wait and see tonight.
Not trying to be a jerk, but does it really matter outside of the top 3 or 4? Considering I really think 1A truly is a 2-horse race with maybe Wilton having a puncher's chance. But this is all kind of pomp and circumstance leading up to a clash between Albernet and Don Bosco.
Yeah, and assuming no one gets hurt tonight,
Yeah. Knock on wood, right?
Can't wrestle Saturday in the state duel. So, I mean, that's always a possibility. You never know.
Yep, and of course, everybody's competing for berths on Saturday at Extreme Arena for the state duel tournament. I know we're running really, really long. Any final thoughts here before we sign off?
No, that was a good interview.
Great interview with Erin Gerlich, the executive director of the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union. A lot going on right now, so that's why we kind of ran really long today, but we appreciate everybody tuning in, listening to us. Thanks to Erin Gerlich for joining us. Thank you, Coach Briggs, for all that you do. Thanks to Becky Gardner for helping us get this going and producing it for us. Thank you for watching us. And Coach Briggs, why don't you take us out?
Let's keep wrestling on the move.